Hello, my name is Billy Gregory, aka Billy Blood, aka Billy Stick. I live in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, by way of Toronto and by way of Pickering. You might know me from a band called Youve the Posse a long time ago, or a band called Bad Blood, or most recently I was in a band called Quarter Tank. I've been a singer in all of those bands, using the word singing lightly. Before that, I was a drummer until I realized that drummers, well, they have to carry more gear and they get way less attention. So I would say if I'm thinking about influences in my life, I'd start with like personal influences like my friends. Honestly, I was really kind of fortunate in a weird way that I was the youngest of all of my friends. So I grew up with some amazing musicians, or around some amazing musicians, in a really important, influential part of my life. Folks like Mark Holman or Moby, Al Nolan, Derek Emerson, like folks that are, really well respected musicians. And they, I looked up to them a lot. They showed me a lot. They introduced me to a lot of really great music. They showed me a scene that I didn't really know. And they sort of helped me sort of come of age, if you will, in the hardcore and punk rock scene in Toronto. Now, if we're talking musically, then there's a whole bunch of other bands that warped me way before Al and Moby and Derek got to me. We're talking about, like, I was a rap kid. So when, the early 80s rolled around, 84, 85, I was listening to like Run DMC. I literally recorded the entire movie of Crush Groove onto a tape, and I let that tape, rock till it popped. I watched the shit and listened to the shit out of that movie. So Fat Boys, Beastie Boys, Curtis Blow, all of that old school rap stuff was me. And then when I finally heard the Beastie Boys on that soundtrack playing She's On It, the rest was history. I knew that that's what I wanted to play. I wanted to play music where I didn't have to sing. I could just yell about shit, and I could have heavy guitars behind me, and that sort of warped me from there. So what got me into punk, metal, and hardcore? I've always sort of listened to punk. My sister was 11 years older than me, so when I was like 7 or 8 at the end of the 70s, she was listening to bands like the Ramones. She was listening to the Monks. So, I grew up listening to like, Drugs in My Pocket and all of those songs, and I loved it. I loved that kind of music. So I was totally, punk adjacent for a lot of years. And then, like I said, I was a rap kid, so I listened to a lot of that music. But I distinctly remember, I listened to metal, like it wasn't weird. First time I kissed a girl, I was wearing a Quiet Riot shirt. But I remember sitting in high school. I think I was probably 17. And my friend Jeff Shorthouse, who later on became the DJ in Youve the Posse and big friends with him ever since, but he's probably brought me out to his car at lunchtime. We were just listening to music. He's like, "Hey, check this out." And he pops in Dag Nasty. And that, I was just listening to it, and I was just like, holy shit. Like, my mind was fucking blown because, like, metal's metal, and like, punk, but punk wasn't melodic like this. I never heard, like, singing like this over that kind of music, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is the kind of music that sort of spoke to me. And then from there, I sort of dove back in, and again, I had Al and Moby and all those guys that were more than willing to help me expand my musical horizon. So that led to like Descendants and All, and Black Flag and all that other stuff. Then my world just opened, and so I got into it a lot later than a lot of folks probably did, because I was listening to other shit, But man, I'm glad I did. So I've watched so many episodes of this, and everyone's got these amazing fucking stories about like Metallica being their first concert and all this stuff. I fucking wish. I actually had to message my sister today because I knew the first show that I went to was with her at the old Ontario Place Forum. And we've narrowed it down to maybe 2 options. Neither one are great. It was either Three Dog Night or Casey and the Sunshine Band. I kind of hope it was Casey, but I have a feeling it was Three Dog Night. The first one I remember going to, she dragged me to Bryan Adams in 1985, I think. I went to at...
just as bad.
Yeah, just as bad. Just as bad. At Massey Hall, I think they filmed the... like one of his videos there. Anyways, doesn't matter. And then I started going to shows on my own. They weren't much better. Steve and I have this one in common. One of my first concerts by myself was Platinum Blonde. And then finally, in my teenage years, I met friends that took me to real shows. First punk rock show I remember going to was Big Drill Car. You can argue whether or not that's punk rock at the old Apocalypse Club in Toronto. And then once I found out about the Apocalypse Club, I was there all the time. I got to see some amazing shows there. We'll talk about the amazing shows later. But, some of the first shows I saw there were like Cannibal Corpse. Cannibal Corpse opening up for Overthrow, and that, or maybe Overthrow opening up for Cannibal Corpse. I can't remember which order, but fucking amazing show. And that's where I, really started seeing cool shows on my own.
Obituary was on that show too.
Was they? Okay. Yeah. So that was probably the thing. Again, I'm missing being just a few years younger than my friends. I feel like I missed out on all of the best shows I could have. Like, I was 3 years younger than them, so they were always talking about the time they got to see X Band at Larry's or whatever. Like, they got to see Black Flag, they got to see the Descendants. I got to see I got to see Rollins' bands. Like, I got to see whatever was left over from those fucking bands, and I was always so jealous that they got to see those cool shows. But I didn't know about that music until later. So my favorite shows. This is a long one. I'm not going to list every favorite show I've ever had because I could go on all night about this, and I feel like nobody needs to hear me talk for that long. But the ones that jump out the most, honestly, I think I mentioned this already, maybe I didn't. Beastie Boys at the Concert Hall. That was on the Check Your Head tour when they disappeared for a long time, then they came back. I dropped acid just before they went on stage, and then they started, and all of a sudden Mike D was in front of me standing on the speakers with his bright green fucking hair, and I was peaking. It was just so fucking amazing. And the whole show we were all just dying. That was amazing. And then backstage, we got backstage afterwards, we were hanging out with the Beastie Boys. I was totally still high, amazed by how tiny they were, like little guys, and I was like, you're the same size you were when my little TV in Crush grew. Like, you're like this big. I was just like dying. And then some other amazing stuff. The concert hall, like, I think everybody's got at least like 10 favorite concert hall shows from Toronto. I got to see Ice Cube there. I got to see Cypress Hill there. Cypress Hill played like a CKLN barbecue. That was bonkers. We went to see, like I mentioned, like Cannibal Corpse at the Apocalypse Club. The Apocalypse Club, there's other shows I saw there that were amazing. Like, I saw the Melvins there. Opening acts were Jesus Lizard and Helmet. Helmet played in front of like 15 people. It was amazing. So that was a trip. I get to see Helmet again in like 3 days before my 50th in a month. So that's kind of cool, opening for Clutch and Quicksand. What else do I have? Oh, okay, I'm going to talk about some shows that I played that were my favorite. I opened for Ice-T once in Guelph. So that was weird in my Yap days. We played a show with Bad Blood. We opened for Indecision in Newark. And that was a trip. That was really fun. It was the first time I'd ever heard somebody ask how much they bench at a show. It was good thing they didn't ask me. They would have been really disappointed with that answer. God, yeah, there's just so many shows that I loved. Sick It All and Slayer back in the day. The last Slayer tour was amazing. Even Anthrax was good on that tour, which blew me away because I thought for sure they were going to be the piss break, but then they came out and played like the best set I've seen Anthrax play in forever. Biohazard at the Opera House was amazing. I think that was like the State of the World address, something like that. State of the Union, whatever it's called. Their crossover album that everyone loved. Saw them on that tour. They were great. Saw Rage Against the Machine, a band I don't really like, but I saw them at the Opera House. That was incredible for like $7 or something before they took off. And then I got to see the Ramones back before they started falling apart, and that was pretty cool too. So yeah, there's just so many shows to mention. And fortunately, the best thing is they keep coming. Every year I have a new favorite show that I just love, and yeah, that's the best part about music, right? It just goes. It keeps going whether you're part of it or not. There's always something cool to see. So the craziest thing I've ever seen at a show. I've seen a lot of things at shows. I feel like the one that everyone's going to mention at some point, because I feel like everybody my age was there, was the AFI incident at the Opera House, where, they get that fucking guy, where the security guard was manhandling kids too much. And was it Davey Riot? Is that his name?
Davey Havoc.
Davey Havoc. Oh, Davey Riot might be a fucking wrestler. Anyways, doesn't matter. Havoc pointed and said, "Get this fucking guy," and the whole fucking crowd beat up this bouncer to the point where like the security team just quit. We thought the show wasn't going to, go on, and it did. They finished the show. I think the lights stayed on for the show or whatever, but that was crazy. I used to put on a bunch of shows called Ring and Ears back in the Bad Blood days in Toronto, so I was like rock and wrestling. And probably the craziest thing, it's not, technically I played the show, it was during the wrestling part, but I'm going to count it because I was involved. I wrestled my first and only wrestling match because a wrestler couldn't get across the border. And a guy named Kingdom James wrestled me. And when I say wrestled, I didn't know how to fucking wrestle. I've never wrestled. I'm not a trained wrestler. Look at me. So what happened was he just beat me up for 5 minutes. He laid out what he was going to do. He told me how he was going to beat me up because somehow that made it better. And the idea was I was going to get cut at one point and I'd bleed just a little bit. So I'm not going to go through the whole match, but there was some back and forth. I realized after he slapped me the very first time that wrestling is very, 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 very real. He hit me so hard my glasses flew out into the crowd at the Opera House, and thankfully somebody I knew got them. But after he slapped me once and mildly concussed me, he then punched the shit out of me for about 5 minutes, threw me around, body slammed me, whipped me into a ring post, took me outside, and then the idea was he would punch me 5 times in the forehead, and then on the 6th time, he would nick me with a razor blade because I was too afraid to cut myself. So he would cut me just a little bit, I would bleed, he'd throw me back into the ring, put a chair over my face, jump on my face, pin me, end of match. After the first slap, I was fucked up. I get outside the ring, he starts punching me. And the Opera House floor is concrete, right? So I'm trying to sell the punches, which is pretty easy when the guy's really fucking punching you. He's punching me in the head, and my head's whipping back. And I'm at the third punch, slammed my head into the concrete, almost knocked myself out, lost count of the punches. I thought I still had one more punch to go, but we were on the 6th one where he was going to nick me. As he held the blade to my face, I sold it like a punch and went, ugh! And the blade went all across my head, and my head just went boom. It was just, my face was red. There's pictures I can, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'll share them. But I got fucked up. And then, my whole forehead was swollen. It looked like disgusting. And then I had to play a show an hour later. So I basically went up there with a concussion and played a show at the Opera House. So that's the craziest thing I'm told I saw. I don't really remember much of it, but yeah, I got the shit kicked out of me, bled everywhere, lost about 3 gallons of blood, and then played a show at the Opera House. One more crazy story, and it's not really about a show, but it's about a way to the show. On our way to the show, Yet Another Posse and Trigger Happy, we played a lot of shows together back in the day, but on this particular occasion, we were traveling to Sudbury, Ontario, Canada together. All loaded into one van. And for those of you who knew Yet Another Posse, our most famous song was a song called Guns. And the chorus was basically just guns, we love them. So we stopped at the Dollarama and we bought a bunch of toy guns, bags and bags of fake guns. We also saw this really neat looking fake wood baseball bat that we bought. So we bought all this stuff, we loaded it into the van, we started driving up somewhere just outside of Sudbury. We all had to piss, so we stopped. I was playing with the fake bat, and Phil Zeller was beside me, so I took the bat and I went like that to Phil, and he fell down because he was pretending that he got hit. So I was like, "Huh, that's funny." So I pretended to hit Phil 12 more times with the bat, and then a few of us pretended to kick Phil. And I guess somebody drove by and saw us beating up a guy with a baseball bat at the side of the road and called the cops. So we were driving into the city, and a cop car pulled out behind us. We were like, "Huh, this cop car's been there for a while." So we started hiding our drugs, as you do. And then, sure enough, after about 15 minutes of tailing us, we were driving to this sort of turnaround, and 3 cop cars pull out in front of block the entire highway. Then the cherries all come on. All the cops come at us from different angles, full roadblock. And the cop starts walking up, hand on the gun, and then as he gets to the car and sees the bat in the windshield, the hand drops, and he's just like, he's got this, oh, for fuck's sakes, look on his face. And he like, he makes us all, show ID and everything, but he looks at the bat and he's like, oh Christ. And then they all start laughing. But yeah, it was like the most tense fucking roadblock for yet another posse and Trigger Happy, all based around a little plastic bat. So, lesson for you kids at home, don't pretend to murder your friends at the side of a highway. So my past and current bands. Luckily, I haven't been in a ton of them. My first band, I don't even want to mention it, but it was some terrible high school band with some friends of ours. This band only existed to basically teach me that I didn't want to be a drummer. It taught me that I wanted all the attention that a frontman can get. So we decided to put together a rap band because we thought it would be funny. So this rap band just got thrown together one weekend, and we decided we wanted to call it Yap, because Yap was a really funny word to us. And we needed to figure out what we could call it. And then suddenly we landed on yet another posse. So it never meant anything. We just always wanted just to call the band Yap. So I was in Yap for years. We did pretty well. We did, in hindsight, it was probably like 3 really hot years, but it was fun. Out of Yap, the last lineup of that band had Jeremy, Dove, and I. And Jeremy and I, after Yap ended, Jeremy went on to start Bad Blood and then called me, and I joined Bad Blood shortly after Jeremy started that band. Bad Blood went for 4 or 5 years. That was probably the band that a lot of folks sort of got behind. To be honest, it was the better band. But because Yap had gotten burned by Interscope Records and a couple of other things, we were too afraid to push it as much as we should have. So that band just kind of stalled in the early 2000s. I took a break, got married, had kids, and then came back and joined Quarter Tank. And Quarter Tank was a band I was in for probably 7 or 8 years with Jesse, who was in Bad Blood with me, and my best friend to this date. We're the closest thing I'll ever have to a brother. And that band went on for a while. And then, early in the pandemic, as things do, that band kind of fell apart and dissolved. Jesse's in a band now called Old Time Moonshine. They're great if you're into the stoner rock thing. Fantastic band with another great group of guys. And I am sitting here in my basement talking to Steve. So what do I like the most about being a musician, and what do I like the least about being a musician? This is kind of funny because this is the first time anyone's ever actually referred to me as a musician, which is kind of flattering because a lot of the music I played isn't very musical. And I've probably been the least musical part of that not very musical music. But honestly, what I like the most about it is what you get out of it. The process of writing a song is pretty amazing. Hearing something start from just like a riff somebody might have been playing while you were tuning, or somebody just fucking around, and then that just grows into this thing, and then the energy that it builds, and then everybody adding their own ideas, and then eventually it turning into something that you play in front of people, and just seeing them go the fuck off to it is pretty fucking incredible. Outside of that, like the process of writing a song and playing, it's the friends you make, the experiences you get, the family you make. Like Bad Blood, on our second record, I sang a lyric that said, I learn less from school than from sleeping on floors. And I meant that. I mean that, like, all the good shit that shaped me, that made me the person I am, for better or for worse, came from music, came from the friends I made and the experiences I had and the hands I shook over the years. And like, that's shit you just can't buy. Like, those memories, the stuff we got to do, and the life that music gave me, the weird paths it took me down. Like, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for music, because I learned computers and web design because my music career wound down at the same time the internet took off. So I just, all these weird paths brought me to who I am. If I'm thinking about what I hate the most about it, there's a couple of things. Driving sucks. Waiting to play a show sucks. Loading in at 6 and playing at midnight sucks. But in hindsight, what I hate the most is that nobody tells you how quickly that shit goes away. Like, one day, you're looking back and it's like, fuck, I miss sitting around for 6 hours being bored with my friends. I don't get to see them anymore. Nobody tells you that, like, this imaginary fucking I have to stop when I'm 30, or in my case 25. That's bullshit. You can be 60 years old and still hitting the road, still writing those songs, still being as excited about music as you ever were. That's what I hate. I hated how music made me think that I had to stop and have kids and do all this stuff. And I started up again. I'm not playing right now, but I know that the next band I join is going to be my favorite band ever, because I'm not going to care about any of that shit that used to hold me back. So I think that's my answer. Final answer. Okay, so favorite food. It's going to have to be Tex-Mex, because it's always been there for me. It's like the one constant in all of my bands. Going back to the Pickering days, we would drive several times a week from Pickering to the border of Oshawa and Oshitby, to go to the Taco Bell, and we would just eat tacos as you do. And then I started going downtown more, and then I started Sneaky D's. I had my first plate of nachos with Mark Gibson, Mark Kluchnick, rest in peace. We split a plate of very inexpensive nachos back then. And now that I live in Hamilton, we've got some great places out this way. My hands down go-to, at least once a week, is Amigos. You'll often catch me on the patio there, probably sipping a margarita and eating a crunch wrap by myself after taking a long bike ride. So my hidden talent is something I'm kind of ashamed of, but actually something I'm also pretty fucking proud of, because I learned this in a pool as a child. I was blessed when I grew up in Scarborough. Before moving to Pickering, we had a pool in my backyard, and one day we were trying to squirt each other with water from our armpits. So we would fill our armpits with water and push them out, but the water fell out of my hand, and that's when I realized that I am probably one of the world's top underarm farters. I got to the point where I was almost doing impressions for a bit, like what do you think the Queen's farts would sound like, or whatever else. But I've sort of lost that talent, but I'm still really good at the basics. So I'm going to rip a couple for you right now. But this isn't something I've done on the internet before. But here we go. There you go. My talent. So I hope you learned a little bit about me today. Thank you for making it this far through. Hopefully the underarm farts redeemed the entire episode. I would like to thank Steve and Stronger Than Ever Videos, because honestly, it keeps this the scene alive. It helps old guys like me think about it. I like to talk about the good old days, because let's be honest, I'm turning 50 soon, so all I have are old days, so they might as well be good. Yeah. Thank you.